Hi there, I'm Dave Birss. I'm a former advertising creative director, and I now help other people have ideas through writing books and doing consultancy and doing training. So I'm doing lots of online training at the moment, either over Zoom for companies and individuals, but also on LinkedIn Learning. So you can find me on there. And this education thing really all came from the fact that I was doing so much research. I was so fascinated with how the brain worked and how you got better ideas out of other people, that as I was doing stuff, as I'm doing research into that, I wanted to share that. And that sort of became my route into writing books and doing training for people. And also as part of this hunger to understand more about how the brain works, I've been doing experiments. And 7 or 8 years ago, I did an experiment with the drum and John Jessup, and we wanted to see if alcohol makes you more creative. So we did an experiment that had 20 advertising creatives. We split them into 2 teams, gave them the same brief. One group could drink as much as they liked, and the other group had to remain sober. And the results were quite interesting. I'm not going to tell you in this video that alcohol does very much help you with your creative output, but you can go and Google it, have a look on the drum, see if you can find the Newt Judge challenge, and that will give you more information there. I did another experiment a few years ago with a friend in Belgrade, a chap called Rhea, and we wanted to see if we could teach our non-dominant hands to draw. So I'm right-handed and he's left-handed, and we wanted to see if by drawing with the other hand, we would actually be able to get good at drawing with our non-dominant hands. So we would draw a self-portrait every single day for a month with our non-dominant hands. And we were quite blown away by the results of that experiment. We didn't think that we would start to see results quite as quickly as we in fact did. But what I want to share with you today is an experiment that wasn't really quite so much of a success. It was an experiment, I guess, that could be defined as the opposite of a success by most measurements. And that was that I had read that if you do things differently and if you break down your habitual ways of thinking, that you would be able to come up with more creative ideas. You would free your brain up to explore different directions. And there's a certain amount of truth in that. But I think the way I did it, I maybe misinterpreted a lot of what that was about. I think I've got a better understanding now. And I took it to the extreme. And I broke myself. So it kind of started, it would start in the morning. I would wake up, and instead of pulling back the covers and leaping out of bed like a young gazelle, like I normally would, I would try to get out of bed a different way every morning. So it might be that I would swivel around and get out of bed backwards, or I might go onto my front and slither down and try and come out the bottom of the bed feet first, or I might pull back the covers and put a hand on the floor first. You know, it'd be anything just to try and do it in a different way. And then I'd go and brush my teeth in a different order. So normally I'd probably start with my back right molars. You know, it might be that one morning I might start with the area behind my incisors and at the bottom. You know, it might be a different pattern every day. I would try and do it differently, try and do it consciously. I would go downstairs for breakfast and I would do things in a different way again. I would try and create a different combination or have a different kind of thing for breakfast. Then I'd try and take a different route to work. So when I got off the train, I'd try and take different streets to be able to get to the office. Sometimes I got lost, I do admit that. Sometimes I did actually go into dead ends and I'd have to find my way back. But I got to know the area, it was interesting. And then I would do my day job of trying to come up with ideas. And after about 6 months, I realized that I had made myself quite dysfunctional. I had broken my brain in many ways, because I'd broken down all of these habitual things that I would normally do. And I discovered that this was a problem about 6 months in, when I was in the kitchen trying to make myself a mug of coffee. So I stood there going, right, I want a coffee. What do I need? And of course, I didn't know, because I had to then work it out. It was all conscious. So it's like, okay, a spoon. So I'd go through the drawers. I couldn't remember which drawer it was in, because nothing, again, was conscious. So I'd go through all the drawers, get a spoon. What else do I need? A mug. So then I'd go through all the cupboards and find a mug, get a spoon and a mug. What else do I need? Milk. Okay, so I go to the fridge and get milk. Right, what else do I need? Coffee. Then I have to go through all the cupboards again till I found the coffee. And there's something missing. What else? And there's, boiling water. So the thing that I should have done first, filling up the kettle, putting it on to boil, was the thing that occurred to me last. And I realized that the amount of effort I was having to put into very, very basic things was, first of all, it was exhausting. And second of all, it was slowing me down. And instead of making a coffee in less than 5 minutes, it was taking me like 10 minutes to make a coffee. So it was wasting a lot of time. And I realized that it wasn't working, this experiment. So I had to start building up these habits again. And as much as it took me about 6 months to break them down and turn myself into this broken human being, it took me well over a year to build up to a place that I felt kind of functional again, to actually build up these little habitual clusters of automated actions. And I'd still then find, even a few years later, that some of these things were missing and it was too conscious. So it actually had quite a long effect. And I was telling this story to Rory Sutherland, because the two of us used to work together. And I was telling him one lunchtime about the fact I'd done this experiment myself. And he was just laughing and saying, "Dave, you are an idiot. Do you not know that a measure of a man's intelligence is how many things he can do without thinking?" It's like, I hadn't really thought of it like that. But he kind of had a point, that there's actually a lot of this habitual stuff that we can do. It frees us up to be able to apply our minds in the right places, in the right way. So it means that we don't have to use this conscious brain power to do stuff. It means that actually we can then apply our conscious thinking in the best way to the best, most valuable things. So I want to talk about the fact that this can be seen as an absolute failure and a total waste of time, but I don't think it was. I think that anything, whether it's a success or a failure, is something that can be valuable to us. And I think it's quite a simple process that you go through to turn failures into something that's valuable. And it's 3 steps that go like this. The first step is review. So you actually review what you've done. You work out what didn't work, what could have been done better, all of these little issues and niggles that you had along the way. So that's the first thing, is review. Second stage is come up with ideas. So actually, what would be the ideas that I could apply to make this better? If I had to run this experiment again, what would I do differently? And then the third stage is to put these things into action. So what are these most important learnings that I can put into action right now? And this is something that's important for us to do, I think, as individuals with what we're doing, but also in business. And I've seen some companies that I worked with would have something that was a little bit of a review process, but the bit that seemed to be missing was the action bit, was actually going, what will we do differently next time? What are the things we can change right now to improve this? So to go through these 3 steps as an example, let's think about what I went through as my failed experiment. So my failed experiment there really being the review stage. What did I learn? What could I have done better? Well, I learned through this that some automations are good. So that's all right, that actually having automated stuff isn't the stuff that's... Breaking that down isn't necessarily going to help you come up with better ideas, because I didn't feel at any point that, wow, I've broken through and I'm coming up with ideas I'd never come up with before. So I realized I'd focused on the wrong thing. I'd focused on these little actions rather than the more important things. So I realized that the most important thing is actually being conscious about the stimulus that you put into your brain. So your brain is like a processor. It's input, process, output. And the thing that changes the output the most, that affects your output, is your input. We like to think it's our brains, and there's a lot of thing in creative industries where people will think that it's all about talent and about their brains and there's something special about them. But the people that I know that are amazing at coming up with ideas are always feeding their minds and looking to learn from lots of other stuff. So that's in review, is that I'd focused on the wrong thing. I'd focused on habits, when in fact what I should have been looking at doing consciously was input, feeding my mind with fresh input and being conscious about that. So the idea that I would come up with this would be that I would focus next time, if I was to do this again, I would focus on building up a habit of consciously looking at fresh input from my brain and learning from these new things. So putting that into action is quite simple. I turn that into a habit. I make sure that I'm finding things that I wouldn't normally look at, things that might grate with me slightly, people's different points of view, pieces of art, and I would consciously look at that and work out, what can I take from that I can apply to my own ideas? So by doing this kind of like pre-processing of, here's the interesting stuff coming in, pre-process it to go, what are the interesting bits here that I can apply? Then when you actually start coming up with ideas, you can use these learnings to generate more interesting output. So I've actually done that, and I've been doing that for the last 10 years or so, that I will be constantly looking for things I haven't seen before and working out what I can learn from it. I've turned it into workshops that I do with clients, with agencies, with other businesses that I work in, and it's really helped. I've found it's a fantastic way of being able to help people come up with ideas that they wouldn't normally have. But the main thing that I want to get out of this for you, or want you to get out of this, is that you have to constantly be experimenting. I think it's really important to experiment. And I think it's really important as part of that also to put in this review, come up with ideas, implement the ideas, process on a loop. So you're never finished, you're never complete, you're constantly changing. And it means that you're more resilient to change because you are constantly changing, so you can adapt. And it means that if you're looking at processes in your organization or things that you do, you're constantly improving the way you do things, you're constantly improving the organization. And that is a really powerful thing. So you never stagnate. So that's really what I wanted to say today, is just, you are in beta. And just embrace that. Embrace that you are learning and you have to change. Do experiments and learn from them. And even if they're a failure, they're of value to you. And I want to finish by saying thank you to the team doing isolated talks. I think you're doing an incredible thing here, some fantastic ones that I've really, really enjoyed. I'm deeply honoured to be one of the people who is delivering one of these. And thank you so much for also supporting important causes. Remember, during times of change, some people don't handle it quite as well as others. And we have to be thinking of others, we have to support them and help them through the changes and help them through the issues. So remember, it's not just you that's in beta. You should be looking to help other people make changes in their life as well. That's all I want to say. Please look after yourself and look after other people as well.